So I'm just basically, I think that we just have this, while I speak, you can have a brief meditation of 1 and 2 minutes. Hi, Remy and Susa, yes. And, just to let your mind think about yesterday and today, and maybe you can recognize some important points coming up, and maybe there is even a storyline in this whole event. For me, it seems that when we look at that we first looked at online and virtual streets, and then the media architecture, and today the technologies and case studies, I must say that it all comes together, I think, with the line with what Michel Terran really started, that it's all about coming out of oneself, and there is a looking for that. It seems that the urban media and is very interested on this, that how people become back a part of the community and decision makers, and it's kind of a reinvention. I have had a sense since yesterday that everybody is just having this sense that the sense of community on planetary scale and with urban neighbors has disappeared, and all the artistic work that discusses racism, etc., is actually, trying to make us re-understand each other. And to me, this seems to be kind of overruling theme. And there is the grammar of identification, interaction paradigms, etc., that can help us to reconnect. Or what do you think, Remy? What is the subject that has risen most to you during these 2 days?
I think we are still quite not mature in the way we see the integration of technologies in cities in a way. So I like to imagine indeed that I do believe that there will have a massive benefit in the way we will use technology, most probably realistically, as one person said yesterday, through mobile phones more than through systems in the city, because that's the most effective and the cheapest will always be integrated faster than infrastructures, especially in developing world, as people asked yesterday, for South America, India or Africa. They don't bother with infrastructure, so mobile phone will be the way. And entrepreneurship in Africa through mobile phone, and all the things that are happening is quite amazing. The main thing that is to happen to me is the fact that precisely because it's about mobile phone, then things will be more and more personalized in a way. And I'm curious to see what will come out of that personal experience through control of identity, or play with identity, or privacy within this. Not that I'm concerned by anything with privacy. What I'm more concerned about is that when I contemplate YouTube, I see that there's 0.1% that really do create content, 1% that edit, 10% that comment, and the rest that watch. So participatory design is something cool for us designers, but the reality will always be a bit more humble when it comes to people's participation, although I think it will be more and more easy. I do believe many things that we don't even think about yet will appear, but these 10% of people that actually do and contribute is probably not. I'm not sure whether it's going to go bigger. I mean, for the social groups, the Dunbar theory was saying that beyond 120 people, you can't manage a persistent relationship. And Facebook is on our Facebook account, most of us probably do have more than 120 people, and people keep asking whether this long-term observation is really changing, or it's just the mechanics of Facebook that makes that number bigger, but we don't maintain relationship with more than 20. So the question is to me the same, whether that participation will indeed increase or not.
So Susa, do you agree with Martin and Remy here that mobile is the planetary urban media?
Media facade.
or do you see something else rising up during these 2 days?
I think it was very interesting in the lecture what Martin gave, where he also started with this theory, and yes, I actually really would agree with that. That the smart city is everyone, and it is now, and it is close to us through the mobile phone and all the possibilities. And of course, I think there will be a big connection in future times with media facades to make it maybe transport the information from your intimate small screen to a larger screen if it makes sense. And of course it has to make sense, and I think this is what we are working. What makes sense on urban screens or urban media facades? How to use them for, let's say, yes, a healthy society, for future development of our cities, and that we can already do it now. And thanks to you, of course, because I think you invited interesting people, and also the network from which is here, and so to see that everybody will contribute a part with his expertise. And then if we all bring it together, this is always these kind of wish. If you bring the technology, the city development, culture on the one side, then of course also the marketing or good marketing models, the financial models on the other side, and bring this all together so that or create this interaction field so that we have influence on this contribution of the smart city.
I'll be very brief. Well, what I sort of kept from yesterday, and in a way it came back in Kai's talk today, the word co-location. I'd like to keep that with me. And for me, it tied. Kai wasn't here perhaps yesterday, but it tied with early morning talks yesterday, where we were very much moving on the street and thinking about how people observe and orientate, and how they make marks there, how they leave something of them, and how they say that I'm here as well. So I think that's something I'd like to keep. On the other hand, I'm not a fan of the ideas of these integrated reactive surfaces and systems, and I don't quite remember the exact word, but when we were having these locative media talks in 2004 and 5, etc., there was also the first sort of criticism of augmented reality coming up, and there was this talk about that we don't really want these seamless spaces, and I think that was also a very good design principle, that you have to have those seams showing it. So I really would love to see, and I think that's also a future scenario if we think of these smooth integrated environments. I think there's space for artists here very much, to sort of keep intimate, clunky, glitchy, do-it-yourself areas in this environment, and create those kind of pockets. I'm more like thinking, for example, the Italian microtelevision movement, which operate in the shadow cone of the broadcasting system. Yeah.
I'm curious about that. When you talk about this, I am here. Will we like the world where everybody is there all the time? If mobile medium is the message and everybody is suddenly there, because I must say that I rather dislike amateur art and the social media. What is kind of world is this where everybody is at the place and in the hood?
Anybody?
Well, I think there's a natural selection through this process. I don't think that will disappear much.
So you think we believe in community vote, popularity vote?
Oh Yeah, definitely, and I think although mobile phones, as I was saying, that the mobile phone will be the screen, a major screen for the city. This being said, I do believe that cities will need, and us as we have communities, we need rituals, and then the mobile phone, it will be certainly a starting point and an ending point, but in between this, I think spaces with rituals will be still needed. So as you look what the success of the festival yesterday night, human gathering is important, and the physical experience. So the screen the personal screen facilitates that, but at the end, meeting real people and having installations within these space will make sense, but probably more as a temporary and specific things than permanent facades on buildings like the bank one that then make no sense.
Yeah. So you can please use that mic. I'll go to the audience as well. Okay. Needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you asked a question? Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want the answer? Have you got not time?
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I was going to say it's clearly a big question for the art world, and of course, new media and media art in the 90s sense is still pretty marginal, not taken seriously by the real art world, let alone the amateur art world, which of course emulates the real art world, that of more traditional media, or ones which have been assimilated into a commercial art market. For me, the question is around processes of validation, new forms of selection and filtering. Like I had a good conversation last night with Michelle, and I think that there's if I had longer time to talk to Michelle today, it would be about the ontology. And that's not really in your question about whether you don't or dislike or do like amateur art, which in its sense is a prejudice. I think you need to ask yourself a bigger question, actually. Because otherwise it's potentially offensive to those people that consider themselves to be amateur. Yeah. So you automatically stated your position in the way you asked the question.
So it's the same system of validation that Remy just also mentioned, that it's all dependent on the systems of validation, whether it's a popularity vote or any other. Does the audience have any points they would like to raise on these 2 last days? What remains?
Martin, we still have plenty of time, 10 minutes.
Well, first I want to say that it's really nice that you've gotten these people together, and it actually turned out in a little different way than I had expected. The focus now that we talk about mobile is a little surprising to me, to be honest. Yes, and that's why it's surprising, because usually I feel a lot more friction. So I really liked when Eve said like the.
Well, Martin, I tried to provoke, but everybody is agreeing that now it's the mobile screen and nothing else is going to be there.
Okay, so then we should move in the other direction and provoke back and say,
Isn't
okay,
anybody
so let's not get carried away
have an
with the
alternative?
mobile, because I think exactly, and I think we saw some of that in the space. What was the name of the space city video? So what I'm really interested in is the materials. So thinking about media as materials. So I think, and I really liked your presentation about the framework for the animistic framework, because now for me the exploration is to figure out, so these materials in various configurations, what spaces and what channels will solidify. So the mobile is standing out because it's a very dynamic and yet in a way very, very easy to use channel. So it's one of the first ones I think that stand out. The screens, of course, stand out because of the legacy from the TV. So I'm really excited to be starting on this journey, because I think the aim for me will be to figure out, okay, so like Susa said, when we converge again, now we've been opening up, when we converge again, what other kinds of solidifying, you could say, bricolages or collections of media or maybe new channels will emerge. I think that's going to be really exciting, because I don't think it will be just the mobile phone, although I think the mobile phone is like the hot shit now. Okay.
So if we have had actually now 2 polls. One was that that artists will take over the urban screens, and the second one was that the mobile is the new urban screen. So what next? Nerea. Anything?
You cut me. Yeah, I agree very much with what Martin said, that I believe that everything, we need to explore the range and see where we find more potentials and more opportunities. But I think mobiles will be used, but they're, for me, not the fundamental issue at all within screens. I mean, they can be very valuable, they can be very useful, but not necessarily the main devices that are necessary for a collective experience of new media in cities.
As an architect, what do you think then? Because you have an architect practice as well, and you'll be working a lot with data. So do you want to continue a little bit to the other direction from the mobile phones? Maybe? You know, to think about still the facades and everything. What do you think of today's facade visions?
I think we're still... That's a difficult question, because the experiences that are now, there's a full range of practices that are leading to the digital facade, and see many people that are exploring how many types of facades and screens we can implement that are not visible, that are integrated, etc., etc. But they're still facades, and the interaction that we saw before, I think still need a lot of have the potential of becoming many other things. The question is whether those materials that Martin was talking about, how do they reconfigure urban space, and that's a very difficult question that I don't think we're able to imagine, and that's why the smart cities don't have futuristic imaginary, as we saw also this morning. How do you envision something that nobody grasps to envision to the full? So it's like tiny parts and pieces, which I agree on your comment as well, that maybe we don't need a full image of the city, and it's just these tiny pockets of experiences that may, through fragments, change our experience and how we relate to each other.
Any comments from the panel to this?
I think this aspect of making it visible, the material, what you have been talking about, I think this is, of course, a very big question, and also an issue for media facades or for urban screens. And for example, when the whole issue about data visualization is something like this. If you, how can I say, if you generate data from our environment, of course this is so invisible in the first hand, you cannot see it, that it is, how can I say, generated. But to take then the circle and bring it back to the public, what is generated invisibly, make it visible on the screens. This is an aspect and a circle what I like very much. And what was of course...
I'm sorry, I have a comment here, a conclusive comment by Heidi Tikka.
Thanks. Minna listed some things that she would like to take with her from this seminar, and I started to follow those lines. And I thought about some emerging questions that for me seem to be something like a source of inspiration that I would like to explore from the rich discussions from this seminar. And I would like to make a link between what Martin said about this, like new configurations that may solidify, and something that that was mentioned in the technical panel. And so for me, like something that we perhaps haven't discussed so much is a question of what kind of perceptual patterns are going to be emerge and solidify like in conjunction with these different technologies and ways of interacting with them that we have discussed. Because like I just realized when Kai was doing his performance that it was really hard for me to divide my attention between the small screen and the big screen, and I think that that will require new skills from the audience, but also from presenters. So, like, how are these, like the new configurations that that emerge from in these ecologies? Like, how are they going to change the ways we perform and how we make our presentations, how we perceive them, and how those what kind of experimental spaces there might be for artists to take those new kinds of perceptual patterns into city spaces.
I think a big point is about experience in more different cases. I mean, if on one hand is the question is kind of got already answered, but the question like, do we want to be everywhere through media, like where everybody is? I think a big point is really here the experience is a different experience if you be there on real space and interact in a real way. And I'm like back to the point also, like we had in Kai's presentation, the poll where artists drive or companies like Google and so on. I voted for Google because I think those companies and all this data we had already, it's like all this immense mass of invisible data they have from us, from what we're doing, like we're acting, like we're thinking already. I mean, we know already, I mean, I'm afraid of that but we know that 40% of users go to bed with their mobile phones. This is still a bit my point, but what I got yesterday is like
somehow pervert when you put it that way.
Yeah, that's probably why I'm so surprised.
Phones are vibrating nowadays.
That's true.
Okay, but
I just have
comments from France, and then
I just want to just mention or just reflect on this fact that once upon a time when human beings were living in natural space without all this surrounding of technology, they look at the sky and they can orient themselves for survival. So that was sort of the picture where they look and they know if the weather changes, if the things are growing or not growing, if it's raining or not. So this was sort of the communication of a lifestyle to the human which were living just in a natural space. So I will think that I could imagine, I would wish that sort of the surrounding we have nowadays, survival has become a different issue because it's not anymore surviving from a daily eating or to get some food just from hunting the things. Now we have all this pressure from all over coming because society has changed, city has made an infrastructure which becomes very difficult to live into, and that makes the society much more difficult. So we have now the new visualization. It's not written on the sky what are the problems to solve or which we are living within. So we should use the new infrastructure, the new signage that we are building to make the environment more livable and to give the perception, which we lost our natural perception, that this sort of represents the field of perception that makes our life easier.
And yet we have a perception system that has evolved about 1 million years. But
I think we are saying thank you to everyone now.
Yes.
And as we see, it's a really vast topic, and I think we chose it, I think partly consciously, that also the network that will start now after this session. that it's called urban media. I think this opened quite well the scope of urban media today, the talks that we had. So ranging from the facades to so it's big and small screens and whatever is in between. So I'm happy, but it's not easy to conclude. But it's a good start. Okay,
and
thank you.
And the